Okay, I'm going to try and do this really quickly. I'm going to show you a new feature here in Ren Garden, added pretty quickly. And just because people have asked about autocomplete, I thought it would be interesting to try making an autocomplete. And it actually kind of worked a little bit when I made the first video, but it wasn't all that good. And I'll tell you what wasn't all that good about it and how it's better. So here I'm going to type AP. I'm going to hit tab, and it's completed that to append. I can hit tab again, goes to apply. If I hit tab again, it'll cycle because those are really the only two things that complete that way. And what's interesting about it is that any key that you press, if the last key you pressed was some kind of completion, like if I hit space or something, it won't interpret that as meaning that I want to replace the selection, which is what it usually would be. Like if I selected that manually and then hit space, then it'll go away. But it has a little binary bit of state that says, hey, did the way that selection get made, was that part of an autocomplete? So it kind of minimizes the amount of stray state that I have to keep track of inside the editor. Now, so of course you want to have it do things like if there's an object that says, XX is 10, XY 20. If you just say obj / then you can tab through the fields. It'll just sort of run through them. Or if you say X, it can complete the object fields as well. Also, if you're doing a function, it can go and it can cycle through the refinements for you. But what seemed like an even kind of more interesting feature that people might like would be to come here to the window, turn on a value explorer. So value explorer is just a little window that when I'm completing, it will show me for instance, the function prototype, or if it's an object, it'll show me what's in the object like that. And so it can even do it with pretty big things, not necessarily the best idea, but going through the system object. And the thing that I want to stress to you, and this is an important point about Ren CPP and why I want you to take note of it, is that the amount of code that the Value Explorer isn't very much. I mean, you can go read it. It's basically a Qt text editor that has this part here where you see it setting up a string stream. So it wants to capture, people have had this problem in the past of wanting the output from help. And so within the binding, the way it's done, you can take other streams, and in this case I'm taking an IO stream that just happens to put the information into a string. So instead of going to a standard out or whatever, I'm hooking that via Ren CPP's set output stream. And then if there's an exception, some kind of error, like if the help function crashes, then I can catch it and not have the Rebol code, or it would be red code as well if that were what was going on, take down the whole program. So when you look at that and you say, gee, that's not very much code, where's all this completion coming from? Well, the completion's a different part, but if you go in and you look at the files that are inside these helpers, things like the autocomplete, here is a file you can just go through and read to see how the logic is delegated to the Rebol routines. And it's pretty straightforward code. You can read it from the top to the bottom. It's commented very well. And the reason I took the time to go through and write it and comment it and do it as a Rebol routine that's coming back with the completion, where to put the position to put the cursor, and if you want a value in the Value Explorer, wanted to show you just how much of the logic can be outsourced to code that's not written in C++, because some people are really kind of having some fear, uncertainty, and doubt, the FUD, talking about it. And it doesn't have to be that way. This can really be an enabling and empowering thing. And I'll remind you that this completion logic and all this stuff, we're talking about stuff that people have built now on 64-bit Mac, We got it on, Windows and Linux. It's got, it has a lot of stuff that could be done. But the question is it going to be done? What's important or interesting to you, and how are you going to help? And as things here are kind of inching along to where, trying to make it more usable for people and not just an experiment, it is still an experiment, but it's just a very big experiment right now. So if I had some definitions of things, the ways that I wanted to change them. So for instance, I wanted to make this loop dialect. Originally I was calling it for, but now I've decided that I think I like it better as loop, because loop dialect is just a really good name for what this is. And, the legacy of the idea that, you can't retake a really good name, in a language that you're supposed to be able to redefine. I think there just isn't, I've said this time and time again, that there just isn't enough of a legacy infrastructure to say that, when you're teaching people the new ropes, to not make the best decisions. And, to also have something like looper gets make looper 1 through 5. And then you can say looper. I can complete it. Looper. And go through that. And you see it come back at none. And yet, my decisions and my little proposals of how I think things should be done is not how everyone would want it. And any good Rebel environment worth its salt is supposed to let you redefine it. These decisions should be things, that are easy to change. So one thing I did do is I made it now so that you can, at any time in the middle of a console, go and swap in a different context, not in the same context that I use. So you could go and say, load, if you pass an object to console, then that will become the console that's used. So you get back to the standard loop and the standard definitions and things like ls working the way they used to work. But that's there, and still there's tons to do and tons that could be done. So hopefully someone will take interest, and certainly now more, with more of it getting pushed out and being written in the Rebel code. If you want to change a behavior, you don't have to be a C++ programmer. You just go in there and work on that code. But at the moment you do have to still build it, because those files are put into the executable. So as resources, and kind of looking at ways to be able to include it with the executable as resources, but also maybe fetch new versions from online or let you use custom versions. So that's all stuff that involves kind of the module system in a way which I never have seen documented, so I don't know how to use it. And that is that.